Hello, welcome to today's webinar, Accounting for Taste, the data restaurants bring and what to do about it. Actually, we were just before we went live, we were just talking about data and all these reports. You got all this information, but what do you do with it? And if you can't interpret it, what's the point in having it? But so my name is Gary Dehart, publisher of Insightful Accountant, and our speaker is Kristen Nies Ciraldo. Kristen is, what I am told, the person that you go to if you want information on working with restaurants. Is that true, Kristen? Did I say
I'm
Christine? It's
definitely one of
Kristen.
the people.
One of the people. All right, one of the two people. And so this is a very short, just a 30-minute webinar, so it's not CPE. So we're not going to go through all of that. I have one poll question we're going to run here on the front end, and it's pretty simple. We have this program called Be Insightful, and it's basically a training track community or community offering 9 training tracks from coaching to tax to business development to marketing, all the areas of your firm that you work in. You may be strong in some areas, maybe weak in others. We have speakers and trainers who can help you grow these specific parts of your businesses. Basically, currently they're 1 hour CPE webinars with a follow-up Q&A time or workshop sessions. We are going to tweak that a little bit over the coming months to where it's much more workshop and community focused. We've just found that you can get webinars anywhere. What people really want is community and opportunities to speak directly a little bit more one-on-one or in group settings with the subject matter experts. So if you'd like some information on that, just say yes. If not, leave it blank or say no, and we won't harass you with it. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over. This is technically it's number 2 in a 6-part series, but our first session was not, we didn't have the full series baked when we put all this together. So right now you are registered for the next 4. You can find the first session on our YouTube channel. Do you remember what it was called, Kristen?
Yes, accounting for taste, what your restaurant clients need from you and what to and how to do it or so I
There we
forget.
go. Yes. Yeah. And we'll send a link to our YouTube page and we'll actually drop it down into the chat as well. But Kristen, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for sharing your depth of knowledge on the restaurant industry.
Thank you for having me. I love talking about restaurants. I'm a weirdo like that. So because we only have a half hour, I'm just gonna jump right into it and share my screen here. So seeing it okay. Yeah. Okay. So,
Yep.
the data restaurant clients bring and what people are put off by restaurants because they think that there's just too much information. And so the purpose of this webinar is to kind of get you more familiar with the data streams you'd be encountering with a restaurant client and how to deal with those data streams in a way that isn't just overwhelm you. I like to think of it as a data avalanche because it can really feel that way, but it's easier than you think to sort of avoid the avalanche part and just collect what you need. So again, my name is Kristen Nies Ciraldo. I've been working with restaurants for over 25 years. I mostly work with independents, so and I started out in fine dining. So there's a lot of razor thin margins, a lot of sort of people doing a lot of jobs, back office tends to be overlooked. So I not only have experience on the accounting side, I also have experience sort of on the ground. I also help other accountants understand restaurant clients better and help restaurant clients understand accounting better. So that's me. Let's talk first about what good data is. If you went to the last webinar, you know that I'm a firm believer that what's good for one person isn't necessarily good for another. Everyone knows, or most people know, what good accounting data is in general. But there's a difference between what is good in general in some ways and what is good in general for restaurants. That's not to say that restaurants don't use really good data, they do, but what's important beyond just for taxes and how things need to be broken down is a little different. So during this webinar, I want you to think about your own practice just thinking about how you serve restaurants, or if you're considering serving restaurants, and think about how you prefer to get data. And one column is one choice, or sort of like on a continuum, and the other column is another choice. So less data versus lots of data from known sources, automation friendly versus client verified, has the processes already or needs your processes, is largely cyclical or is largely unique, and needs transformation or needs curation. The last one means, does it need to just be transformed? It does need to be picked over, but it's largely intact. So just have those in the back of your mind. And let's get into what is going on with the data streams. It is truly an avalanche of data. Probably the best known aspect is the POS. From there, people, when they think of the data with regard to restaurants, they usually think of all the invoices, just a ton of invoices with a ton of lines on the invoices, multiple pages, so many products, so many things. And then after that, it's usually the people related data, lots of employees, lots of turnover usually, and special considerations with how much, what you have to do with data, the whole tip thing. There's just a lot of different pay rates. Hardly anyone's on salary. It's just a lot. Beyond that, they have all the regular sources of data, like bank fees, and they tend to do more in cash than regular businesses. There's a lot. So let's start with the biggie, the POS. This is probably one of the first things you think of or have noticed when you've gone into a restaurant. It's usually a very big purchase amount for restaurants. So it's not just a big commitment financially for them, it's also a big commitment operationally. They have to set it up. They have to teach their employees to use it. People have to be able to find what they're looking for quickly. All of those things, all of their workflows can change if they change POSs. Because of that, usually a restaurant accountant can't just convince people to change their POSs just because. That said, if you wanted to niche down and only serve clients that used a particular POS, you could do that. But it is a huge financial and even more importantly, time commitment for restaurants. And that colors how much you have to be sort of chained to this particular system, right? First of all, it's it's very pricey even for them to run. And a lot of restaurant accountants or a lot of restaurant owners feel like they're spending all this money for POS and they're not getting what they need out of it. There is so much detail in a POS, it's insane. Um, it's the center of their world, and it can be intimidating depending on how the setup of the POS went. It can be intimidating both for us as accountants, we don't want to mess anything up, but also for our clients. They don't necessarily know how to change anything in there. Nowadays, when people get Toast or Square, oftentimes there's someone walking them through the setup process, even asking them to just submit their menus to be loaded by their sales staff. So many people don't know how to set it up. And on the accounting side, on the sort of payment and what categories accounting might need, a lot of that is absent. So it can be really intimidating on both sides. Beyond that, just the volume of data, almost everyone has one, and it's a ton of data. The insights are often not insightful. And the key here is it is an avalanche and you don't have to process it all. So many people are tempted because this is an automated system. They think, wow, I have access to so much data. I'm going to bring it all in so I can do all the figures and I can give all the accounting insights. And the reality is many people try and recreate the POS inside accounting, which slows down the GL. it just makes reporting, it's just, you're drowning in detail. There's no bigger picture. Um, the point of that is leave the intense detail in the POS and instead decide what you need and set up your automations accordingly. There are lots of ways to make access to a POS great. First of all, it's capturing all kinds of data. So even if you don't import all the data, if there's a problem, say with sales or reconciliations, you can go back and see very granularly what is going on in in the uh, in the POS. It's very precise. It, it has to balance. It's pre-balanced for you. It has to balance at the end of the day, even if some stuff goes to, I don't know, hold over the next day or whatever, balances, which means it's easier than not to automate. And there are a lot of things out there that are available to automate process to get that data into QuickBooks or Zero or anything else. Um, so the key is to curate your feed to make it so that the POS is serving you. You're not just replicating the POS. Um, you want to get enough detail, keeping in mind that any KPIs you run are hampered by whatever metric ingredient has the least amount of detail. That's the metric ingredient that determines how precise that KPI is going to be. That said, you have all the context you need inside a POS when it comes to sales, and consequently, a lot of insight on cost of goods sold and labor. Speaking of cost of goods sold, there are a ton of invoices. Every restaurant is different. How many products they buy might depend by restaurant. But even if they just have a very simple menu, they're still buying a lot of things, probably very often. Uh, that is a lot of data. How you keep that data, let's talk about an invoice, which is usually what intimidates people. You have three choices. You can keep it as a total just for the invoice or a total for a department on the invoice, put that towards the correct account and be done. You could record things as under products, like, oh, we bought $150 worth of lemons. Okay. Or you can record even more granularly by quantity of products. So we bought 150 pounds, or we bought 150 pounds of lemons and they're $1 a pound. So that you know sort of how much, that would be a lot of lemons, first of all, a lot of lemons. But you know how much you bought and how much it costs, not just how much it costs. That's a lot of detail. And usually a lot of that detail is on every invoice. So how do you know? How do you decide? First of all, how oriented is your particular client? And how detail oriented do you want to be in your reporting? How precise are the recipes? Because a lot of detail on what you bought doesn't mean a hell of beans, literally. If your recipes aren't also detailed and being measured well, if you have a client that's sort of improvising a lot, it's not technically as useful to have that like 150 pounds of lemons at $1 a pound. It might be worth it to know the lemon price, but not necessarily the pound price. And metrics are only as good as their most vague part. So when you're looking at sales or payroll and how that compares to your expenses, particularly your cost of goods sold, sales is very vague. The cost of goods sold is really detailed. You're kind of missing out a little bit on that detail of the cost of goods sold. You're doing a lot of work for not as much payout as it could have. So just keeping in mind, levels of details can be an opportunity. It is a great practice to say, okay, my service level is going to be up here and I'm going to give all the detail, or maybe you're sort of just doing stuff for smaller places that don't want all the detail. You can charge less. You can make it so that the service levels are what determines your pricing. On the other side, if you want to be the detail person, that can be a big differentiator in the marketplace. because a lot of people don't do that work. That being said, there are a lot of apps out there now that help you do that work and allow you to keep a lot of that work outside the GL so that it's not slowing you down. You can access it whenever you want. Things like XtraChef, Margin Edge, Automate, those kinds of things help you and your clients keep track of pricing and ingredients. But it is more data. So, people, this is a lot. The first decision you have to make when you're a restaurant servicer is will you or will you not run payroll? It seems really straightforward. Hey, I run payroll, or hey, I don't. But even if you don't run payroll, you are still dealing with payroll. Why? Because if there are audits and you are standing next to someone with regard to finances, you're probably going to have to participate in that audit. So even if you're not doing payroll, keeping an eye on that payroll data stream is important. It can allow you to fend off problems with the payroll before they become memorialized with taxes and actually cause real problems for your owners. Other common labor streams are scheduling apps, tip tracking apps, and just manual tip tracking manual in the sense of like an Excel spreadsheet. And then untraditional fun places that labor shows up, like in the petty cash or just in the bank, randomly someone just gets written a check for like back hours. Often that's happening to you because you feel like you have to say, who is this? What is this? What is this? And that's pretty common. I think this scares people too about restaurants. That's more common in restaurants than it might be um, in other industries. Again, there's a lot of turnover and there's a lot of different kinds of payment, both tips, hourly, overtime, double overtime, catering, all the things. The best thing you can do for data, especially labor data, is just keep it clean and current. Um, It's not just about getting it right for your client. This is one of those areas where it's not just about getting it right for your clients, it's about getting it right for outside departments, people that want to know workers' comp, obviously taxes, not just your taxes, but taxes for your employees. So even if you aren't in charge of the payroll and labor, you need to keep informed about it and keep your eye on those data streams. One of the best ways to keep an eye on these data streams is to build in some checks about this avalanche. So sort of a way you can sort of stick your head in and go, is everything all right in here? And back out. That might be reconciling tips against the sales tips. That might mean making sure that there aren't huge swings in the amount people are being paid. It might mean making sure people are classed correctly inside the payroll, even though you don't run it, so that workers' comp reports become really easy. Just having some basic reconciliations that you do with regard to labor, even if you're not running payroll, even if it's out of scope, just always included in scope is what I'm saying, because ultimately the audit you saved could be your own, to be honest. It's just it really can save you a headache, because if they mess up labor, if they don't run things in time, if they have to do an extra payroll and all those things, guess who they're going to come to like make that right in the books? It's you. So a little ounce of prevention goes a long way. Okay, more of what matters in terms of the data avalanche. It's all about getting it on time too, and I feel like it truly is like an avalanche. So there's either like nothing happening, or it just happens all at once when it comes to getting data from clients. So here are some more uh, ways that ways you're getting data. The bank feeds and the credit card feeds and all the feeds you would find in your general ledger if it's automated and online, which hopefully it is. Something that doesn't show up in a feed is cash and things that happen with cash. And if you don't address cash, then what you'll have at the end of the year is a lot of missing cash and therefore a lot of missing expenses or owner draws aren't in the books. You'll have an account for the safe account or the cash on hand account that has thousands of dollars in it, and they don't have thousands of dollars on site, for sure they don't. And then the mail, both email and physical mail, they get a lot of mail, and a lot of it is just solicitations and things like that, but in there is important stuff, and I found that I would rather be the one to look through the mail and decide what's important than try and educate my clients on forwarding me what's important. That's my personal philosophy on that, but it is important to ask your clients to definitely like have a list. If anything comes from any of these agencies, I get it immediately, that kind of thing. In general, I find it's easier to allow ask my clients to allow me access, direct access on my own without them being involved to as many of these data feeds as possible. Access to the POS, access to the bank, including the bank feed, but just also the bank. Ask access to vendors. I set up email addresses where I can communicate to vendors about statements and things like that without it getting mixed in with all my other just regular stuff. The more simple you can keep it for them, the more they will actually react and respond when you do ask them for something. Those things that you can't get anywhere else, like the cash, and they'll be more willing to like say, "Hey, let's share a spreadsheet online. You have a spreadsheet you're using for tips and checkouts and what you're spending in petty cash. Great. Can we put that online and will you share it with me? Can I look at it?" Being in a place where they trust you enough to have access to these things, it is by far the best scenario because even though, yes, it does mean more data in your face, it also means more resources for you to just go and get what you need or go and look at something to solve a problem that you've seen in the books. And the less you bother them, the more responsive they will be when you do. So the bottom line is curate first, then automate. In other words, make sure you have all the things you need and know and not everything available, and then automate those parts. Don't automate everything and then find what you need in QuickBooks or Xero or whatever. Instead, find what you need in the original source. And then if you can, narrow down what goes into QuickBooks or into your inbox or whatever. That's important because if you have access to those original databases, those original data streams, you don't have to put everything into your email feed. You don't have to put everything into QuickBooks or Xero. You don't have to have your finger on the pulse constantly scanning if something came up that you need. You've already built an automation around your decisions rather than the other way around, finding what you need after everything came in. Finally, just remember you're in control of this. It's your business. And if you're serving restaurants, just keeping in mind, not all the data you have access to is required all the time or even in advance. Some of it may be required later. Knowing what's required for your clients, for taxes in general, and for the information you need to make your processes work, start there, automate from there, and go forward. Also remember that good detail is a relative term. It all depends on what reporting you're giving them, what you'd like to show your clients, how big they are, how much they need, how complicated they are, what your service level you're providing is, what's the scope of work that you've given them? How much are they paying you? You know, are they paying you to digest a bunch of data or are they paying you just to like get the bottom line and book that just for taxes? So just keep in mind when you're thinking about those things, also think about your data detail should be as close as you can, the same level of detail across every sort of arena. Number two, only automate as much as it is reliable. It just saves yourself a lot of headache. And make sure that you are automating as currently as the useful data allows. You don't want every single table that they like turn in a restaurant to go into QuickBooks. That's very, very current, but it's not useful at all. That said, I have a rule, entering sales by day inside of a restaurant's QuickBook or bar's QuickBooks or Zero or anything else, entering sales by day in a GL is always useful, always. And with all the automation out there, there's no reason not to do it. And it is so incredibly useful, both for you as the accountant and reconciling purposes, all the things, but also for your clients and what you are capable of showing them in the books. So, sort of gone through this thing. What makes up the restaurant data? What kind of data does it lean towards? It tends to be lots of data from known sources. So even though it can be scary that there's so much data, please remember that it's the kind of data that doesn't live in people's heads. You don't have to shake their shoulders to get it out of them. Most times you can go and get it. Number two, a lot of it is incredibly automation friendly. Number three, some of it has processes, some of it needs your processes. Tends to be that the data streams themselves suggest certain processes, but a lot of times the client you're serving doesn't have processes on how to digest that data, so you can use your own. It's largely cyclical. There aren't a lot of surprises. There might be things that don't happen every day or every month, but there's not a lot of surprises. It needs to be curated more than it needs to be transformed. Like I said, a lot of it comes out balanced, right? Invoices are balanced, daily sales are balanced, all those things. Payroll's balanced. It's a matter of what data do I actually want to put into my GL. So I always add this at the end. If you are a person that is thinking about doing restaurant books, but thinks you don't get to do it because you don't have enough experience, stop that kind of thinking. You know more than you think you do. And this is exactly the kind of conscientiousness these folks need. I would also say that the likelihood that you have been in a restaurant is 100%. And the likelihood that you have been in a law office is not 100%, or the likelihood you've been at a marketing agency or a particular kind of retail store or in the back office at a doctor's office. You know a lot about how restaurants work because you've been in them. So you know a lot more than you do on some of the industries you're already serving, and you're serving them well, I'm sure. You can do it. And that's it.
Okay, Kristen, before we conclude this day, there's a question on
Sure.
our chat box. So it says here, just so we understand, are you suggesting we go online and get that info from their daily summary reports, or should we be downloading this from POS terminal?
So there are ways to download it from the POS terminal. However, there are very reliable apps out there that hook up a GL to a POS and download daily sales. I personally use Shogo and cannot recommend it enough. A lot of other apps that that pull detail into a GL have the functionality that they also pull in sales, as well as all kinds of other things. So sales summaries are very, very common and useful. So that's why I said if it has to be put in manually, I wouldn't say there's no excuse not to do it. I wouldn't say that. But because for like, I don't know, I think that was like $35 a month. You can literally pull in all that detail in every night, like in your sleep, it just happens. There's like just no reason not to do it. There's no reason not to do it. And it is also a good litmus test, because if the restaurant client you're working with says, well, I don't want my stuff hooked up to automations, then that is a good indicator that that might be a hard person to serve. So that's kind of my feeling on that. I hope that answered your question, Cheryl.
All right, so I think we can call this a day. And thank you so much, Kristen, for the wonderful insights. And also to you guys, I hope to see you next session. And goodbye. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.